Harry only. Those two words are allegedly circulating through Buckingham Palace right now, and they represent the most devastating verdict on Meghan Markle's position within the royal family that we have ever seen. The images flooding social media tell a story that no amount of Sussex spin can contradict. Prince Harry, appearing at recent royal-adjacent events without his wife by his side, looking relaxed, welcomed, and dare I say it, almost like the prince we remember from before Meghan tore everything apart. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle remains conspicuously absent, and the internet has absolutely zero chill about pointing out the obvious connection. The mockery flooding Twitter and other platforms right now is nothing short of savage. Hashtags calling Meghan the problem all along are gaining traction faster than her Netflix viewership numbers ever did. Users are posting side-by-side comparisons of Harry's demeanor with and without his wife present. And folks, the contrast is striking enough that even casual observers are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. One viral post that has been shared tens of thousands of times simply stated what many have been thinking for years. Remove the common denominator, and suddenly Harry is welcomed back into the fold. Coincidence? The responses overwhelmingly suggest people do not think so. But here is where this story takes an even more dramatic turn. Palace insiders are now allegedly saying out loud what many suspected they were thinking privately. According to sources familiar with internal family discussions, senior royals have reportedly greenlit what can only be described as a Harry-only approach to any potential reconciliation. Let that sink in for a moment. The royal family, an institution known for its diplomatic language and careful public statements, has allegedly made a calculated decision that Meghan Markle is simply not required for Harry's return to the fold. One insider put it bluntly when speaking to reporters. He is more manageable without her present. Everyone can see it. The implications of this alleged strategy are absolutely staggering. We are not talking about subtle hints or vague suggestions here. We are talking about a deliberate, calculated approach that has reportedly been years in the making. The same family that welcomed Meghan with open arms, that praised her as a breath of fresh air, that allowed her to take center stage at some of the most important royal events in modern history, has allegedly concluded that her presence is now more hindrance than help when it comes to healing the rift with Harry. And the brutal public mockery she is facing suggests that the court of public opinion has reached the exact same verdict. But the social media pile-on and palace whispers are just the tip of this iceberg, and what we are about to reveal shows a pattern of differential treatment that has been building for far longer than most people realize. The question of when exactly the royals started treating solo Harry differently than Harry and Meghan as a unit requires us to look back over the past several months with fresh eyes. The pattern that emerges is not subtle, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every time Prince Harry has appeared at events or engaged with family members without Meghan present, the response has been noticeably warmer, more welcoming, and infinitely less guarded. It is as if the royal family has been conducting a quiet experiment, and the results are now too obvious to ignore. Think back to the various occasions when Harry has been spotted in the United Kingdom or at international events representing causes close to his heart. Sources who observed these interactions describe a prince who seemed more at ease, more willing to engage, and crucially more open to the kind of familial warmth that seemed to evaporate during his joint appearances with Meghan. One royal commentator noted that the body language alone tells you everything you need to know. When Harry is alone, shoulders down, genuine smiles, actual conversation. When Meghan is there, he is constantly looking to her for cues, guarded, almost defensive. The transformation is remarkable. What makes this pattern even more significant is the alleged confirmation that it reflects deliberate internal family discussions rather than mere coincidence. According to those familiar with the situation, there have been multiple conversations among senior royals about how to approach the Harry situation, and the consensus that has allegedly emerged is that Meghan's involvement complicates everything. One source close to the family reportedly stated that there is a general understanding that progress with Harry is possible, but only if certain variables are removed from the equation. Allow me to translate that diplomatic language for you. They want to deal with Harry, they do not want to deal with Meghan. The timeline of this emerging strategy is particularly telling. Insiders suggest that the shift in approach began gaining momentum after several failed attempts at reconciliation that allegedly fell apart specifically because of demands or conditions linked to Meghan. Each time progress seemed possible, something would derail it, and those closest to the negotiations reportedly identified a common factor. The palace learned its lesson the hard way. One insider allegedly revealed, every olive branch extended was met with conditions that made meaningful reconciliation impossible. The decision to try a different approach was not made lightly, but it was made with clear eyes about what was and was not working. For those who might think this is simply media speculation or wishful thinking from royal supporters, consider the evidence accumulating in plain sight. The warmth shown to Harry at recent events, the carefully worded statements that reference the prince without mentioning his wife, the strategic leaks about family members missing Harry specifically, all of it points to a coordinated approach that distinguishes between the son they want back and the daughter-in-law who allegedly complicated his departure in the first place. This is not random. This is strategy. But if the internal family dynamics are this calculated, the public mockery Meghan is facing makes the palace whispers look positively gentle by comparison. The social media landscape right now is absolutely brutal for Meghan Markle, and there is no diplomatic way to describe what is happening. The mockery is relentless, savage, and spreading faster than her team can possibly contain. Prominent accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers are posting commentary that would have been considered unthinkably harsh just a few years ago, and the engagement these posts are receiving suggests a massive shift in public sentiment that should terrify anyone invested in the Sussex brand. Royal commentators who once tried to maintain some semblance of balance have apparently abandoned that approach entirely. One well-known figure in the royal watching community described Meghan as toxic to the brand in a viral video that has been viewed millions of times. Another stated without any hedging that the evidence is now overwhelming that Harry functions better, is received better, and frankly seems happier when operating independently. These are not anonymous trolls hiding behind fake accounts. These are established voices in the royal commentary space who are clearly feeling emboldened to say what they perhaps always believed but previously softened for public consumption. The hashtag situation tells its own damning story. Trends like Harry without Meghan have been gaining traction with overwhelmingly positive sentiment attached. Users are sharing clips and photos of Harry looking genuinely happy at solo events, contrasting them with images where he appears tense and uncomfortable alongside his wife. The commentary accompanying these posts ranges from sympathetic observations about a prince allegedly trapped in a difficult situation, to outright mockery of Meghan as the obvious common denominator in every Sussex disaster. One particularly viral thread methodically listed every failed Sussex venture, every staff departure, every burned bridge, and asked readers to identify what all of these situations had in common. The responses were unanimous and unsparing. What makes this public pile-on particularly significant is its mainstream penetration. This is not limited to dedicated royal watching communities or accounts with obvious agendas. Regular social media users, celebrities, commentators from completely unrelated fields, all of them are weighing in with observations that paint a consistent picture. A prominent entertainment journalist posted that Hollywood has been whispering about this dynamic for years, and it is fascinating to watch the public finally catch up to what industry insiders have known all along. Let that sink in for a moment. The suggestion that Meghan's reputation within the entertainment industry is even worse than her public perception is absolutely devastating. The irony of the situation is absolutely staggering when you consider how carefully the Sussexes have tried to control their narrative. They left the royal family ostensibly to escape media scrutiny and build their own platform where they could tell their own story. They signed massive deals with Netflix and Spotify specifically to shape public perception on their terms. And yet here we are with public sentiment turning against Meghan more viciously than anything she allegedly experienced as a working royal. All those millions of dollars, all those carefully produced documentaries, all those podcast episodes, and the verdict from the court of public opinion is still brutal and getting worse by the day. But the public mockery, as harsh as it is, pales in comparison to what is allegedly being said behind closed doors at the palace. The palace walls have ears, and those ears are apparently feeding information to sources who paint a picture of Harry that seems almost unrecognizable from the defensive, guarded prince we see at joint Sussex appearances. Insiders with direct knowledge of staff interactions are now describing what they call the Harry transformation that occurs when Meghan is not present. One source who spoke on condition of anonymity was remarkably candid about the contrast. It is like dealing with two completely different people, they allegedly revealed. Solo Harry listens, engages, shows genuine appreciation for the people around him. The version we see otherwise is closed off, suspicious, and frankly exhausting to work with. The specific examples these insiders provide are damning in their consistency. Multiple sources have allegedly described situations where Harry arrived at events or meetings alone and immediately demonstrated a different energy. He is more respectful to staff, one insider claimed. He asks questions and actually waits for answers. He makes eye contact, shows appreciation, remembers names, all the things that seem to disappear when he is in joint mode. For anyone who has followed the Sussex staff exodus over the years, these observations add crucial context to why so many professionals have allegedly found working for the couple unsustainable. The historical parallel that royal watchers are drawing is to how the palace has handled other controversial spouses throughout its long history. The institution has centuries of experience managing situations where a royal's choice of partner created complications for the family and the crown. The playbook apparently involves patience, strategic separation of the royal from the spouse's influence where possible, and long-term thinking about the health of the institution. One historian who advises on royal matters reportedly noted that the approach currently being taken with Harry is consistent with how the palace has successfully navigated similar situations in the past. The family survives by thinking in decades and centuries, not news cycles. They know how to wait. What makes the current situation different, according to those familiar with internal discussions, is the alleged recognition that Harry himself may be more open to this gradual reintegration than anyone previously believed. Sources describe a prince who seems tired, conflicted, and perhaps finally beginning to question choices that once seemed so clear-cut. The staff who interact with him in Meghan's absence reportedly see glimpses of genuine doubt, moments where the Harry they remember seems to briefly resurface before retreating again behind the defensive walls he has built. One insider put it movingly, "You can see the conflict written on his face sometimes. There is a part of him that misses all of this, misses his family, misses his old life, but whether he can ever act on those feelings is another question entirely." The cumulative weight of these insider accounts points to a deliberate palace strategy that distinguishes between Harry as an individual worth recovering and Harry as half of a problematic unit. The family allegedly believes that their son and brother can be reached, can be brought back into some meaningful relationship with the institution he was born into. They just believe, based on years of painful experience, that achieving this requires removing certain obstacles from the equation. And when it comes to understanding this strategy, no one's position matters more than King Charles himself, whose calculated approach reveals exactly how far he is willing to go. King Charles finds himself in perhaps the most emotionally complex position of anyone involved in this family drama, and his alleged strategy reveals a man trying desperately to balance his duties as monarch with his desires as a father. Sources close to the king describe someone who has never stopped loving his younger son, never stopped hoping for reconciliation, but who has also learned painful lessons about the terms on which that reconciliation might be possible. The door remains open for Harry. One insider allegedly revealed, "It has never been closed," but the king has been very clear, both publicly and privately, about what kind of relationship is on offer versus what demands he will not accommodate. The infamous statement that Charles is not a bank provided a rare public glimpse into the financial tensions that allegedly plague the father-son relationship. But what has received less attention is how Charles reportedly distinguishes between financial demands, which he views as unacceptable given the circumstances, and genuine emotional reconnection, which he allegedly craves. According to those familiar with his thinking, the king is absolutely willing to welcome his son back into a meaningful family relationship. What he is not willing to do is fund a lifestyle or organization that has been used to attack the very institution he now leads. The distinction matters enormously when trying to understand Charles's approach. Insiders describe a king who watches every solo Harry appearance with intense interest, noting the transformation that occurs when his son operates independently. Charles allegedly sees in these moments the Harry he remembers, the charming, warm, slightly mischievous prince who could light up any room before what sources describe as the change. One person close to the king reportedly stated that he genuinely believes his son is still in there somewhere, and that with time, patience, and perhaps distance from certain influences, a real relationship might be recoverable. It is the hope that keeps him from giving up entirely. The strategic patience Charles is exercising reflects both his personality and his long experience navigating family crises. This is a man who waited decades for the role he now occupies, who endured enormous public criticism of his own marriage and choices, who knows better than almost anyone that public sentiment can shift dramatically over time. He is applying those lessons to the Harry situation, allegedly telling family members that rushing to judgment or closing doors permanently would be counterproductive. Time has a way of clarifying things. One source quoted him as saying, "Harry will eventually see things more clearly. Our job is to make sure there is something to come back to when he does." But the king's patient, hopeful approach reportedly puts him at odds with another family member whose position is far less forgiving. The tension between father and eldest son over how to handle the Harry and Meghan situation has allegedly become a significant point of conflict within the family. Charles counsels patience and open doors. William, according to multiple sources, has a very different perspective entirely. And when it comes to William's position on any potential reconciliation, the word being used most often by insiders is ultimatum. Prince William has allegedly made his position crystal clear to his father, and it leaves almost no room for the kind of nuanced reconciliation Charles might hope for. According to sources with knowledge of private family discussions, William has applied significant pressure on the king to maintain firm boundaries, specifically where Meghan is concerned. The future king reportedly views any softening toward his sister-in-law as not just unwise but actively harmful to the institution he will one day lead. One insider described William's stance as immovable, stating that he has communicated in no uncertain terms that there are certain individuals who can never be trusted again, and his father needs to accept that reality. The tension this has created between father and son represents what some are calling a new royal war brewing within the family. Charles, the compromiser, the man who has spent his life seeking middle ground and gradual change, finds himself facing an heir whose approach to the Sussex situation is far more absolute. William allegedly believes that his father's emotional attachment to Harry clouds his judgment about the threat Meghan poses to the monarchy's reputation and stability. The discussions have reportedly become heated at times, with William reminding his father that he will be the one inheriting whatever mess is left behind by decisions made today. Central to William's hardline stance is his reported fury over Meghan's alleged treatment of Catherine during her period of fragile health. Sources describe a prince who watched his wife navigate an incredibly difficult time while simultaneously dealing with what he perceived as calculated attacks and undermining behavior from Montecito. One insider close to William allegedly stated that he will never forgive what was done to Catherine when she was at her most vulnerable. Never. That is not anger that will fade with time. It is a fundamental breach that cannot be repaired. The specifics of what William believes Meghan did remain largely unspoken publicly, but those familiar with his thinking suggest the list is long and damning. What makes William's position particularly significant is his dual role as both family member and future monarch. He is not just a brother feeling protective of his sibling's estranged wife. He is the heir to the throne, with responsibility for thinking about the long-term health and reputation of the institution. From that perspective, according to those who understand his reasoning, accommodating Meghan in any way represents an unacceptable risk. She has demonstrated repeatedly that she cannot be trusted. One source allegedly summarized William's view. Every opportunity given was exploited. Every private conversation became tabloid fodder. Every olive branch was used as a weapon. William remembers all of it, and he will not allow it to happen again. The pressure William is placing on Charles has reportedly created genuine friction within the family. The king, torn between his roles as father and sovereign, allegedly finds himself squeezed between his desire to help Harry and his recognition that William's concerns are not without merit. Palace insiders describe a situation where every discussion about the Sussexes becomes an exercise in navigating conflicting loyalties and incompatible positions. And standing firmly alongside William in his uncompromising stance is someone whose perspective on Meghan may be even more damaging to any hopes of reconciliation. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has allegedly been watching Meghan Markle's behavior with careful, methodical attention, and what she has observed has reportedly led her to support her husband's hardline position without reservation. Sources close to the princess describe a woman who initially tried to build a relationship with her sister-in-law, who made genuine efforts to welcome Meghan into the family, and who was allegedly rewarded with what can only be described as betrayal. The shady feelings Meghan allegedly harbored toward Catherine were apparently visible to everyone around them, creating an atmosphere of tension that made meaningful sisterhood impossible. What makes Catherine's current position particularly significant is the alleged documentation she has compiled of Meghan's behavior over the years. According to those familiar with the situation, the princess has kept careful records of incidents, conversations, and interactions that painted a troubling picture of her sister-in-law's conduct and motivations. These records allegedly exist not as ammunition for public warfare but as protection, evidence that could be referenced if needed to counter any future claims or accusations from the Sussex camp. One insider described it as institutional memory, stating that Catherine learned early on that certain people will rewrite history to suit their narrative. She made sure there would be receipts. The specific incidents Catherine allegedly documented span the entire timeline of her relationship with Meghan, from the early days when the American actress first entered Harry's life through the explosive departure and beyond. Sources suggest the records include instances of what Catherine perceived as deliberate undermining, strategic leaks she believed originated from Meghan's camp, and behavior during private family moments that contradicted the public narrative the Sussexes were constructing. Let us be brutally honest here. If even half of what insiders suggest Catherine has documented is accurate, it represents a devastating counter to Meghan's claims of being victimized by the royal family. Catherine's support for William's position reportedly extends beyond mere agreement to active advocacy. She has allegedly communicated directly to King Charles her view that any accommodation of Meghan represents a risk not worth taking. The princess, known for her diplomatic demeanor and careful public statements, has apparently been far more direct in private family discussions. Sources describe a woman who feels genuinely wronged, who believes she and her family were subjected to a campaign of manipulation and image damage, and who has no interest in pretending otherwise for the sake of superficial family harmony. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is be honest about who people really are. One insider allegedly quoted her as saying, "The unified front presented by William and Catherine creates an almost insurmountable obstacle for any Meghan-inclusive reconciliation scenario." The future king and queen have apparently concluded, based on years of direct experience, that Meghan Markle cannot be trusted within the family structure. Their position leaves Harry in an impossible bind, forced to choose between his wife and any meaningful relationship with the relatives who will shape the monarchy for generations to come. And this brings us to the most painful question of all. What is happening in Harry's own heart as he watches the doors close one by one? The reports emerging about Harry's private state of mind paint a picture of a man caught in an almost unbearable emotional vice, torn between loyalties that increasingly seem irreconcilable. According to friends who have allegedly spoken about their conversations with the prince, Harry has admitted to experiencing profound regrets about certain aspects of how Megxit unfolded. These are not minor quibbles about logistics or timing, but reportedly deep misgivings about choices that have cost him his relationship with his family, his country, and the life he once knew. One friend allegedly stated that Harry has said more than once that he wishes things had gone differently. He does not always specify what exactly, but the regret is real, and it is heavy. The specific elements Harry allegedly wishes had been handled differently vary depending on the source, but certain themes emerge consistently. The Oprah interview appears to be a significant source of regret, with Harry reportedly acknowledging that some of the claims made created damage that may never be undone. The Netflix documentary similarly haunts him, according to those familiar with his thinking, particularly certain accusations against family members that he allegedly now recognizes as either exaggerated or presented without crucial context. One insider put it bluntly, Harry knows that certain bridges were not just burned but demolished. He knows that some of what was said can never be unsaid, and late at night when he is honest with himself, that knowledge eats at him. The psychological toll of being caught between wife and family is apparently enormous. Sources describe a prince who maintains a brave face in public but struggles privately with the isolation his choices have created. The life in Montecito that was supposed to represent freedom and authentic living has allegedly become something closer to gilded exile, comfortable but empty of the connections and purpose that once gave his existence meaning. Friends worry about him. One source revealed, he is surrounded by all this wealth and supposed freedom, but he seems lost. The spark that made Harry seems diminished. People who care about him find it painful to watch. The question that haunts everyone observing this situation is whether Harry can ever act on his regrets without simultaneously destroying his marriage. The dynamic as described by insiders leaves almost no room for him to pursue reconciliation with his family while maintaining his relationship with Meghan. Every step toward one seemingly requires a step away from the other. He is trapped, one insider allegedly observed. If he tries to reconnect with his family in any meaningful way, Meghan will view it as betrayal. If he stays in his current position, the distance from his family will only grow. There is no good option. There is only choosing which loss you can live with. The loneliness of Harry's position is compounded by the apparent recognition that the life he chose has not delivered what was promised. The big deals, the public platform, the chance to be authentic outside royal constraints, none of it has produced the fulfillment he allegedly expected. Instead, he finds himself increasingly isolated, increasingly questioned, and increasingly forced to confront the gap between what he gave up and what he got in return. And while Harry wrestles with his private demons, his wife's position grows more precarious by the day. Meghan Markle's situation right now can only be described as increasingly isolated, and the evidence is mounting in ways that should alarm anyone invested in her success. Her Hollywood ventures have struggled dramatically without the royal connection that once made her such an attractive partner for studios and streaming platforms. The Netflix deal that was supposed to establish her as a major content creator has produced diminishing returns and increasing skepticism about her viability as a standalone brand. The Spotify partnership ended in disaster and mutual recrimination, and the vaunted Hollywood connections that were supposed to replace royal standing have failed to materialize into anything resembling sustained success. Industry insiders are now openly questioning a dynamic that they previously only whispered about in private. Is Meghan Markle actually an asset to the Sussex brand, or has she become its biggest liability? The question would have been unthinkable just a few years ago, when Meghan was being celebrated as the modernizing force that would transform the royal family. Now it is asked routinely by entertainment executives, talent agents, and media strategists who have watched the Sussex trajectory with professional interest. One prominent industry figure allegedly stated that the numbers do not lie. Harry solo generates more interest, more goodwill, more engagement than anything they do together. At some point, the business people around them have to have that conversation, even if no one wants to. The contrast between Harry's reception at solo events and the couple's joint reception is stark and getting starker. When Harry appears alone, representing causes he genuinely cares about, the response is notably warmer. People remember the charming prince they fell in love with during his bachelor days. They see glimpses of the Harry who served in Afghanistan, who created the Invictus Games, who seemed genuinely dedicated to service. When Meghan is present, the narrative shifts immediately to Sussex drama, strategic positioning, and questions about authenticity. It is a branding problem that no amount of expensive public relations can solve because it reflects something real about public perception. Sources close to the situation describe a Meghan who is increasingly aware of and troubled by this dynamic, but seemingly unable or unwilling to address its root causes. One insider alleged that she attributes every setback to external forces, whether media bias, royal interference, or public rather than examining how her own choices and behavior might contribute to the problems she faces. The pattern is frustrating for those trying to help her, this source claimed. Every piece of constructive feedback is rejected as an attack. Every suggestion that she might consider a different approach is dismissed as not understanding her situation. It makes progress essentially impossible. The trajectory Meghan is on leads to an increasingly uncomfortable conclusion. Her brand, separate from Harry and the royal connection, has not demonstrated independent viability. Her ventures have struggled or failed. Her public reputation has deteriorated rather than improved, despite complete control over her own narrative. The gap between the global superstar she clearly sees herself as and the reality of her current position grows wider with each passing month. All of which brings us to the question on everyone's mind: where does this all lead? The stark reality facing everyone involved in this royal drama can be summarized in devastatingly simple terms. The royals want Harry, the public wants Harry, but Meghan remains the obstacle standing between Prince Harry and any meaningful reconnection with the family and institution he was born into. This is not speculation or interpretation anymore. It is the clear conclusion to be drawn from months of evidence, insider accounts, and observable patterns that all point in the same direction. The family has made a calculation, and Meghan is not included in the version of the future they are working toward. What happens next depends almost entirely on choices Harry has not yet made and may never be able to make. Can a man walk away from his marriage to reclaim his family? Should he even consider such a thing? The romantic in us wants to believe that love conquers all, that Harry and Meghan can find some path that does not require him to choose between wife and family. But the realist recognizes that the positions have hardened, the trust has been destroyed, and the obstacles to any Meghan-inclusive reconciliation appear insurmountable. Someone will eventually have to give, and nothing in Meghan's history suggests she is capable of the kind of humility and compromise that might create space for healing. Harry remains trapped in a limbo of his own creation, surrounded by wealth and supposed freedom, but cut off from almost everything that once gave his life meaning and purpose. The question is whether he will remain in this suspended state indefinitely, watching from a distance as his family moves on without him, or whether something will eventually shift that forces a decision he has thus far avoided. Insiders suggest that King Charles's health situation may accelerate the timeline, creating urgency that did not previously exist. Others believe that Harry's growing disillusionment with the California dream may eventually reach a breaking point. Still others think Meghan herself may make choices that force Harry's hand in ways no one currently anticipates. The tragedy of the situation is how unnecessary it all feels, how avoidable the current deadlock would have been with different choices at crucial moments. Harry could have left working royal life without declaring war on his family. He could have built his American life without tearing down the institution he came from. He could have supported his wife while maintaining some relationship with his brother, father, and extended family. None of those things happened. And now everyone involved is living with the consequences of choices that cannot be unmade. Is Meghan the price of royal reconciliation? That framing may be uncomfortable, but it appears to be exactly how the royal family sees the situation. They want their son and brother back. They have made that clear through every channel available, but they want him back without the person they hold responsible for the destruction of those relationships in the first place. Whether Harry will ever be willing to pay that price, whether he even could at this point, remains the central unanswerable question of this entire saga. Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.